I say tomato and he says tomato, but everybody seems to hate patent pools and everybody love AV1 because it's open source and royalty free. But John Ozer just wrote that it isn't. Free, not free. Free, not free. Free. John, are you there? Do I have to pay royalties on content or not? What's the answer?
I've got this handy dandy slide that people can download from the article, and all the information is in the article. Let's just go through the codecs one by one. H.264, the codec that almost everyone uses, there is no royalty on free internet video. The main patent pool is by MPEG-LA, but if you sell subscriptions, like you're on Netflix, you pay for over 1 million subscribers, $100,000. Pretty good deal for Netflix. Pay-per-view, if it's under 12 minutes, it's free. And if it's over 12 minutes, you pay 2% of your proceeds as a royalty, up to the $9.75 million annual cap. VP9, Google says it's completely royalty-free. There's a patent pool from Sysvel that claims that there are royalties on consumer devices, but not content. So you can check the URL shown on the right. No content royalties at this point, whether for free or for fee. LCEVC, there are 2 patent pools that are in place. MPEG-LA, there are no royalties for any type of content. Access Advance, there is a 2-cent royalty or 2.25 cents royalty on LCEVC encoded video that's distributed on physical media. So hard disks, Blu-ray disks, or USB drives, you pay a fee. Free internet video, there is none. And the cap there is $3 million. AV1 is the same deal. The Alliance for Open Media says it's totally royalty-free. Sysvel has a patent pool, but it doesn't charge royalties on content. VVC, same 2-pool structure. MPEG-LA does not charge any royalties on content. Access Advance has the same charge on physical media. Instead of 2.25 cents, it's 0.28 cents. And that's capped at $3.75 million. And then LCEVC is kind of an outlier. All the royalties for LCEVC are paid by the publisher, not by the player manufacturer or the encoding manufacturer. And the maximum annual cap there is $3.75 million.
So help me understand, there are codec patent royalties and codec content royalties. Which is which, and what is this whole controversy about?
So there are patent pools that are collections of patent owners who come together to create a pool for convenience. So instead of licensing individually, you can license individually to all the patent owners, you can license to a pool. Now, pools decide what to charge for and how much, obviously. In the case of MPEG-LA, the H.264 pool, kind of the oldest pool out there, as I said before, they charge for content. That's the pay-per-view and subscription, and that's paid by the publisher. There's also a royalty on encoders and decoders, and that's paid typically by the device manufacturers, like Apple would pay it, or Samsung would pay it for TVs and phones, and that's where the vast bulk of royalties are paid. Very little of the overall royalties spent on codecs are for content. The vast majority of it is going to be the device manufacturers, and that's typically mobile devices, phones, tablets, and TVs and computers.
Shall we treat the codec patent pools as a necessary devil or angel sent from heaven?
It depends on how you look at things. If you consider H.264, kind of the fundamental codec that's used in the web, there's one patent pool that gathers patents from, I think it's 30 or 40 different patent owners. And H.264 made video on the web and all supporting devices. I mean, it was in Adobe Flash. It was the major codec used there. It was the first codec used by Apple in their devices, which kind of made that whole market, first iPods, then iPads, then smartphones. And it's used in all digital TVs. Now, if you want to use it, if you want to use those patents, you have to pay. I mean, that's established. That's patent law that's enforceable in any jurisdiction around the world. And you have 2 choices. Either you get one contract with the patent pool for those 30 or 40 patent owners, or you do bilateral deals with each patent owner. And that jacks your administrative costs by 40 because you have to do 40 licenses instead of one, and it likely increases your overall royalties because you're not going to get a discount from each patent owner. So if you look at it from that perspective, I think patent owners are a net positive. If you look at it from the perspective that internet video should be free, then patent owners are evil.
John, you okay today? You look like you could use a FRAND. Get it? A patent joke. What do codec patent pools charge for?
Good one. Codec patent pools, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, they charge typically for devices and for content in some cases. The concept of FRAND stands for fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. And if you have a standard-based codec, say H.264, HEVC, or VVC, or LCEVC, any of the standard-based codecs, there is an obligation on your part to charge a royalty that's fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. And that's because it's recognized in the law that patent owners of standard-based patents have a lot of power. So once H.264 became the codec accepted on everywhere, if you wanted to manufacture a TV, you needed H.264. And if without the FRAND obligation, you could charge what you wanted. But the courts have instituted FRAND again, which fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory, to make sure that those royalties are not excessive.
Obviously, having a patent pool is convenient since one doesn't have to negotiate with each individual patent owner. But who decides about the pricing, the individual patent owner or pool's administrator?
Typically, patent owners come together with a patent pool administrator, and we've mentioned a couple of them. There's CISFEL, there's MPEG-LA, there's Access Advance, and they form the pool. And the patent owners pretty much decide all the key terms of the royalty agreement, what gets charged, what the charges are. And then the patent pool administrator is in charge of getting the licensing agreements and enforcing or administrating the enforcement of any patent claims that happen from the pool.
In most cases, the device producers and not the content producers or content suppliers are the ones paying the codec royalties. On the surface, it seems logical since the device that cannot do anything wouldn't really be in high demand. By the same token, the mobile game providers or streaming service providers would not exist without a device that can receive what they provide. Miki Mihas, Senior Vice President at Marconi, comment on that indicated that cloud and streaming services are big beneficiaries of codec technologies, yet they are not contributing to the cost of the codec technologies they rely on. Pretend we are not recording. I promise I will not tell anyone. Tell me what you really think.
It's an interesting argument. The Vnova, who owns the LCEVC technology, took that approach and said, we're going to charge the content owners because they're the ones who benefit from the advanced compression in the technology standard. If you look, historically at companies like Netflix and YouTube and Hulu and all the big companies that succeeded in streaming, they succeeded because codecs were there to support it, and there was wide support for those codecs. H.264 literally plays 99-point-something% of all devices. If you didn't have that certainty, you wouldn't have the publishers benefiting from that. So yeah, they've gotten a largely free ride from the content royalties. On the other hand, there was so much furor when HEVC Advanced decided to try and charge for patent royalties that that's what started the Alliance for Open Media. That's why AV1 came to the surface. So there would be so much animosity if the major standard setting organizations or the patent pools that represented those technology wanted to charge content royalties in a big way, that it's just hard to see that happening. The accepted means, the accepted schema is that free internet video, there is no charge for any kind of content, and that's YouTube, that's obviously not Netflix, but it's any free service, and it's hard to see how they're going to put that toothpaste back in the tube and start charging for free internet content.
In case of LCEVC, royalties are charged on content, specifically a capped low per user fee on the streaming service actually using the codec. This approach is useful from a tactical perspective. A company that wants to deploy LCEVC becomes independent, since playback can be enabled in software on many platforms. The licensor can simply distribute a player to its target endpoints. Is this solution the one we shall be expecting, or at least paying more attention to in the near future?
I think that Vinova was very smart in this approach because they allowed publishers who wanted to use their technology to control their own destiny. So the typical way codecs are rolled out is you have to wait for device support. So you'd have to wait for support on the Apple platform. You'd have to wait for support in computer browsers. You'd have to wait for support in smart TVs. Now, LCEVC is a software-only codec that you can add to most of these platforms. But if Vinova licensees had to wait until all the companies who control this actually supported LCEVC, it would never get off the ground. So they decided, we're not going to charge the encoder vendors. We're not going to charge the player vendors. We're going to charge the content publishers. We're going to give them everything they need to deploy the codec, and and that's how we're going to operate. Now, HEVC is playable everywhere at this point. So you really don't have that structure. I think VDC is headed in the same direction. You'll see, most devices are going to support it. You would think most browsers will support it after Chrome decided to support HEVC. So LCEVC is, they adopted a very unusual tactic because they had a very kind of discrete problem that they didn't share with HEVC or AV1 or VP9 or H.264. But whether that will become the standard going forward is something we don't know at this point.
Okay, so let's be clear. What's the deal with AV1? Is it royalty free or not?
The clear answer is we don't know. The Alliance for Open Media says it's open source and royalty free. Sysfel has a patent pool. They did due diligence to form that patent pool, which means they checked all the patents in the pool and confirmed that they're relevant to AV1. But at this point, we just don't know because the two sides haven't gotten together and it hasn't been litigated. So at this point, pretty sure there's not going to be any content royalties because that's not in the AV1 pool. But if you're a device manufacturer, there is a defense fund to defend against any patent action by Sysfel. But if you do end up paying royalties for hardware playback, the Alliance for Open Media isn't going to reimburse you for those patents or royalties. So, at this point, you've got to make your own decision about what the reality is.